אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
Hostilities have broken out between Israel and Palestine, and the tensions that had been gathering steam.
Welcome and thanks for tuning in. You're watching Gravitas. My name is Priyanka Sharma. Let's get started. It's December 2023 and a familiar fear is back. I'm talking about the Wuhan virus. India's Kerala state has put out an advisory. It has asked people to stay cautious. No need to panic, but very important to stay on guard. Because there is a sharp rise in COVID cases. A new subvariant has been detected. It was previously found in America and no prizes for guessing in China. So what happens now? Should you be traveling? Should you be putting on a mask? Are you vaccinated? Yes, it's time to ask all these questions again. On Gravitas tonight, we'll get you the facts. Also on the show, an old video of Italy's Prime Minister is making waves on the internet today. Giorgia Meloni has said that Islam and Europe are simply not compatible. And today, Donald Trump is making headlines for his extreme rhetoric. He says migrants are poisoning the blood of America. So on the show, it's time to call out Western hypocrisy and the deep-seated bias with which the West views migrants. 8 terrorists linked to the Islamic State were arrested today. The National Investigation Agency in India raided 19 locations across 4 states. Who was arrested? What did they find? On Gravitas, we tell you all about it. A primary school teacher turned out to be a serial killer. She has now been executed in China. I'll tell you about her gruesome list of murders, abductions, and robberies. Stay with me. Our cover story. The Wuhan virus is back to haunt us. A new subvariant has India worried, and rightfully so. Cases are rising. The central government has issued an advisory. States have been asked to stay alert. It is 9 p.m. IST on the 18th of December, and I'm afraid I'm bringing you bad news because the Wuhan virus is back. In an advisory to Indian states, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has said, and I'm quoting, recently a few states, union territories like Kerala have reported a slight upsurge in COVID-19 cases. It goes on to say that considering the upcoming festive season, there is a need to put in place requisite public health measures and other arrangements to minimize risk of a rise in transmission of this disease. Indian states have been asked, or rather advised, to ensure that there is adequate testing in place. They also have been told to send positive samples for genome sequencing. States have also been asked to report cases of influenza-like illness and severe acute respiratory illness. Here's something else that the central government has asked states to do. Engage all public and private healthcare facilities in the preparedness and response drills. You see, there have been at least 127 new infections in the last 24 hours, which has taken the active caseload to 1,828. This comes on the heels of a new subvariant that has been detected in the country. It is called JN.1. So what do we know about this new subvariant? The variation is believed to have been first detected in Luxembourg. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, there is no indication of an increased severity from JN.1. But the subvariant has driven a significant rise in cases. Currently, cases of the JN.1 have been reported in several countries in the West and also in China. In the United States, it makes up 15 to 29% of all cases. Singapore is also battling a rise in cases. In fact, there has been a jump of about 24,000 cases in a week. Now, I'm talking about the period between December 3rd and 9th. Hospitalization is up. People have been told to wear a mask. In Singapore, the total number of cases have crossed 56,000. I repeat, 56,000. And all these cases are believed to have stemmed from the JN.1 subvariant. The next question: what are the symptoms of this subvariant? Experts say the symptoms are not too different from that of other strains. These include fever, a runny nose, a headache. Look around you. You'll probably see several people complaining of these symptoms, and that is a cause of concern. In India, the first case of the JN.1 was reported in Kerala. The patient is a 78-year-old woman. She reportedly had mild influenza-like symptoms. And now in neighbouring Karnataka, the government has made mask wearing compulsory for all those who are above the age of 60 and those with underlying comorbidities. Some more facts. The government has also asked those with symptoms of a cough, any phlegm and fever to wear a mask. So what should you be doing? For one, be vigilant. Keep an eye out for any kind of symptoms. I've mentioned the symptoms already. And please, get on a call with your doctor the moment you feel unwell. Isolate yourself if that is possible. And if you haven't taken your COVID-19 vaccine yet, it's high time you do so. It's imperative that you do so. Let's move on now. When will Benjamin Netanyahu stop? When will the Israeli Prime Minister agree to a ceasefire? In the last 24 hours, more than 100 people have been killed in the Jabalia refugee camp in Gaza. Many of them are women and children. There are dozens who are still missing. In the last 24 hours, details have also emerged of Israeli hostages being killed by the Israeli military, the IDF. It happened on Friday. The 3 hostages had managed to escape their Hamas captors. They were in Gaza City's Shejaya neighborhood. One of the Israeli troops spotted 3 men who were exiting the building. The troops grew wary, suspicious. All 3 men were shirtless. One of them was carrying a stick with a makeshift white flag, white being the color of truce and peace. The 3 hostages were trying to send a message that they were harmless. If anything, they needed help. It was an SOS call. They were moving towards the Israeli soldiers, hoping that the soldier would help them return to their home, to Israel. Instead, the soldier opened fire. 2 of them died on spot. The 3rd hostage ran back to the building from which he had escaped. He started shouting, "Help," in Hebrew. Other soldiers in the area heard the cry for help. Moments later, when the 3rd hostage came out of the building, another soldier opened fire at him. He too was killed. The details of this IDF shooting hostages have sent shockwaves through Israel. Why did Israeli troops murder their own? The IDF says the soldiers thought that the 3 hostages were being used by Hamas to lure the IDF into a trap. Both the situation in Jabalia and the grim details of these hostages being killed point at the question that I'm asking you tonight. When will all of this stop? When will Netanyahu stop the war? The families of the hostages want Netanyahu to do more to bring their loved ones back home. Remember, 130 hostages are still in Gaza. Their families are accusing the Israeli military of abandoning the hostages, quote-unquote, murdering them. The Prime Minister is being called out for ignoring the hostages left behind, for whipping up the war narrative again and again. Over the weekend, Israel released the footage of what it claims is a newly discovered tunnel. Take a look.
Doing our main mission.
Guys, let's move to the side.
We are going to enter to the biggest tunnel we found in Gaza, the biggest secret of Sinwar, his project, his subterranean tunnel project. We're going to enter. It was a secret that we have revealed that was meant to target the crossing.
This is Hamas, this is why we have to defeat Hamas. And it takes time, because when we need to demolish this kind of tunnels and reveal and demolish, it takes time.
Here's another video. It's difficult to verify when it was shot. The IDF claims the man in the video is Mohammed Sinwar. Who is he? The right-hand man and brother of Gaza chief Yahya Sinwar. The IDF claims the video shows Mohammed being driven through a giant underground tunnel in Gaza. These videos help Israel's war narrative. They help Israel to justify the bombing of Gaza, or so Israel hopes. But the fact is, the war is becoming hard to sell. There is growing pressure from the West. Countries are calling for a sustainable ceasefire. France, for example, is calling for an immediate and durable truce. Netanyahu is losing international support. Today, countries at the UN Security Council are voting on a new resolution demanding a ceasefire. This resolution talks about, quote-unquote, urgent and sustainable cessation of hostilities to allow for safe and unhindered humanitarian access in the Gaza Strip. The United States had vetoed the previous resolution. Will Washington take a different road this time? Remember, all's not well between Biden and Bibi. Biden has told Netanyahu to change, even warned him about losing international support. But Netanyahu is determined to continue a long war. His key objective is to destroy Hamas, also to hold on to power. He has promised to continue fighting until absolute victory is achieved. Quick question, is Netanyahu's end goal even achievable? Consider this, it's been 2 months since the Gaza war began and Hamas is still fighting. There is a good chance that Netanyahu may not be able to eliminate Hamas any time in the near future, but in the process, his quest will expand the Gaza war all the way from Yemen to Lebanon. There are already reports of Israel opening a new front in the war. The Israeli military has reportedly drawn up plans to attack southern Gaza. Why? The IDF says it wants to drive Hezbollah forces to the north. We are talking beyond the Litani River. Then, you have the Houthis. Their attacks in the Red Sea have made the water a no-go zone for commercial ships. The Red Sea is among the world's most important oil routes. On Saturday alone, the US claims to have shot down 14 Houthi drones in these dangerous waters. At least 7 shipping companies have said that they will be diverting their ships from the Red Sea. This includes the world's largest shipping group, MSC, or the Mediterranean Shipping Company, the Danish shipping giant Maersk, and German Hapag-Lloyd. You see, Red Sea shipping has now become a casualty in the Gaza war. And you and I will be paying the price for this, quite literally. Let's face it, the Red Sea is not going to get any safer till Israel de-escalates. Houthis have vowed to stand with Hamas in the war. They won't stop until Israel stops the war or calls for a ceasefire. Reports quoting Egyptian security sources say Israel and Hamas are open to a new ceasefire agreement. So what's coming in the way of this big announcement? Qatar and Egypt insist that aid shipments into Gaza be expedited. They also want Israel to reopen the Kerem Shalom crossing. Hamas wants Israel to withdraw to preset lines. The group also wants to decide which hostages will be released as part of the ceasefire. Israel has rejected the prospect of withdrawal. As for the hostages, Israel wants a list before it can agree to the time and duration of the ceasefire. You see, the final decision on whether or not to escalate the war rests with Netanyahu. So what will he do? Stop the war or continue to pay the price for it? Now let's cut across to the live press briefing of the Israeli Defense Minister in Tel Aviv.
Around the world are watching, and they know that Israel's victory is the victory of the free world led by the United States of America. In our war against Hamas, the Hamas terrorist organization is a war, it's not a war against the people of Gaza. We are fighting a brutal enemy that hides behind civilians. Billions of dollars have been invested in Gaza, money that should have gone to civilian infrastructure and instead was used to build a network of tunnels hundreds of kilometers long, equipped by military facilities. Today, IDF troops are operating in Hamas hotspots across Gaza. In northern Gaza, our troops have eliminated thousands of terrorists, destroyed military infrastructure, and dismantled most of the battalions operating in the area. In South Gaza, in Khan Yunis, we are precise and focused on eliminate Hamas leadership and military infrastructure. Detecting and engaging Hamas leadership and the chain of command span over the phases of this war and will continue until we fully achieve our goals. Secretary Austin, we both know the complexities of war. We both fought brutal terrorist organization. We know that it takes time. Unlike our enemies, we are defending our values and we operate according to international law. The IDF is operating to minimize the harm to civilian population. We are also working with international partners to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian aid. Yet, any time we discuss humanitarian issues, we must remember the 129 hostages we held in Gaza. This is the most humanitarian issue. On October 8th, a day after Hamas attack, Hezbollah opened fire unprovoked. The threats of rockets, missiles, and drones is unacceptable. Over 80,000 citizens have been displaced, living as refugees in their own country. We are determined to create a new reality, restoring security in the area, based on UN Resolution 1701, pushing back Hezbollah. We will bring back the residents of the north to their homes on the border after full security will be restored. We prefer to do so via understanding, ensuring that the border region is clear of terrorists and does not allow direct threats of our citizens. If such a process will not be implemented diplomatically, we will not hesitate to act.
Yeah, that, of course, was the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant holding a press conference along with the U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, talking about the IDF strategy in the Israel-Hamas war. He said that in South Gaza, Khan Yunis, the focus of the IDF is to eliminate Hamas, and that they understand the brutality of this war, but this is not a war against civilians, but a war against Hamas. Right, let's now shift our focus to China. A notorious serial killer has been executed. Her name was Lao Rongshi. Let me put a face on it. This is what she looked like. She used to be a primary school teacher. Yes, a school teacher. Imagine the number of kids who were exposed to this criminal. Fortunately, nothing bad happened at that time. In 1993, she met her boyfriend, Fa Ziying. In 1996, the trouble began. Lao's crimes began to surface. For 3 years, she committed murders, abductions, and robberies. Fa Ziying, her boyfriend, was her partner in crime. They did their dirty work in southeast China, mainly in the cities of Nanchang, Wenzhou, Shangzhou, and Hefei. Lao worked as a hostess in entertainment venues. Her job was to look for targets. She would spot rich people. Fa would commit the violence. First, they kidnapped individuals to extort money. How much? More than 100,000 yuan or $14,000. They also threatened to acquire their property. Eventually, the couple turned to murdering people. They killed 7 in total. Lao was directly involved in killing 5 of them. In one case, the duo murdered a couple and their 3-year-old child. Yes, they didn't even spare a child. First, they killed the family. Then, Lao mutilated the body of the male victim. Then the two went on to rob their home. The couple was on the police's radar. In 1999, the authorities finally got a hold of them. Fa was out collecting ransom. He thought his victim had gone to collect cash. But in reality, she had gone to call the cops. Fa was caught red-handed, but he helped Lao evade by lying to the cops. He was executed later that year. Lao was still on the run. For 2 decades, she managed to elude Chinese authorities. She adopted various aliases, worked odd jobs, lay low, and fooled the police, all until 2019. She was working at a mall in Xiamen, selling watches. That's when a police database helped identify her as a fugitive that they had been seeking for 20 years. She was charged with murder, kidnapping, and robbery. In 2020, Lao was hauled before the court. When her trial began, she apologized to the families of the victims with tears in her eyes. She also offered money as compensation, even though she didn't have much in her bank account. She claimed that she didn't mean to hurt anyone, that in truth, she was trapped in an abusive relationship with Fa Ziying, her boyfriend, who forced her into these crimes. You see, Lao decided to play the victim card. She further claimed that she had 4 abortions while she was with Fa and was battered by him. She alleges that her boyfriend would beat her up, choke her, torture her. When she talked of breaking up, he threatened to kill her family. She says, and I quote, "I didn't want to kill anyone, I just wanted to live." Now, we don't know how much of this can be believed, so take it all with a pinch of salt. This is a cold-blooded serial killer we are talking about. She had murdered, mutilated, and committed heinous crimes. She had destroyed families. Reports say that one of the victims had 3 very bright children, but none of them could finish schooling because of the trauma. In 2021, Lao was handed the death penalty by an intermediate court. In 2022, the sentence was upheld by the High Court. Once the top court approved the decision, Lao was finally executed. It took the police 20 long years to get a hold of her. The Chinese media is now reporting that justice has been served. Let's shift our focus to America now. US President Joe Biden just had a close call. A sedan got dangerously close to his motorcade, crashing into his Secret Service vehicle. This incident raises crucial questions about whether or not US presidential security is in a shambles. We bring you a blow-by-blow account of how it all unfolded in our next report. Take a look.
An alarming incident in Delaware has raised red flags about the security of the US president. Recent footage reveals a dramatic scene. It involves a sedan, a Secret Service vehicle, and President Joe Biden and the First Lady. Here's how it unfolded. President Biden was outside his campaign offices in downtown Wilmington around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. He and First Lady Jill Biden were speaking to reporters after finishing dinner scheduled with the campaign staff members. It was then that a sedan bearing Delaware license plates suddenly hit the Secret Service vehicle. The collision happened at an intersection just 130 feet away from the president's location. The Secret Service reacted swiftly and decisively, their hands tightly gripping their firearms, ready to respond if a threat arose. Their firm commands to the driver can be heard in the video.
Back up, back up.
Photographs from the scene show a shocked President Biden being quickly led away. Despite their assurances of the incident being accidental, the situation has raised serious concerns. How could a vehicle come so close to the president's highly secure motorcade? Motorcade that's well known the world over for being unreachable. Wilmington police, confirming that there were no injuries, are now investigating possible impairment as a cause of the crash. In other words, the possibility of the sedan driver being fatigued or under the influence of alcohol or other substances like drugs is still on the table. Although President Biden and the First Lady were unharmed, this incident hints at a potential weakness in presidential security measures. If one fatigued or drunk driver can come within a 40-meter radius of the president unintentionally, how easy would it be for an assailant with months of planning to close in on him? The question becomes even more pressing if you look at the truckloads of money spent on the president's security. It's well documented that just the state limousine that the President of the United States travels in costs a massive $15.8 million. This car, nicknamed Beast, is immune to chemical attacks, has night vision devices, smoke screens, and defensive measures. Apart from this, the presidential motorcade has anywhere between 40 to 50 cars. Jet black, bulletproof, and with more countermeasures than we can list. The president's security detail is formed after carefully picking which cars would best serve the purpose of the trip. Then there are swarms of Secret Service officials that surround the president 24/7, 365 days a year. And yet, one sedan, one driver could pose a threat. Funding to the Secret Service is no joke either. In financial year 2023 alone, the US Secret Service's proposed budget stood at a whopping $2.97 billion. That's right, almost $3 billion. That's more than the GDP of a few countries. While official budget documents remain tight-lipped about how much of this goes to protecting the president. Since the US Secret Service is also responsible for other missions like investigating financial crimes, cyber crimes, missing children cases, etc., it's obvious that it is not a small sum. There's an abundance of funding and no shortage of cars, personnel, or latest technology for the motorcade. Yet there is no guarantee that the car crash was a one-off incident. That ahead of the crucial presidential elections and at a geopolitically volatile time, the President of the United States will remain safe. So is Joe Biden's security in a shambles? Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Right, now you have all heard about NATO. But have you heard about Napto, the North Atlantic Pacific Treaty Organization? It looks very much like NATO. In fact, it seems that NATO is very interested in extending its strategic influence all the way to Asia. And the major player in this Asian NATO, if you will, is Japan. Just take a look at these developments. On Sunday, North Korea resumed its record year of missile tests. Pyongyang conducted back-to-back missile tests. One of them included a long-range ballistic missile that is capable of hitting the United States of America. On Monday, South Korea said that the missile from the Hermit Kingdom flew at least 1,000 kilometers before splashing down in the Sea of Japan. Japan's Ministry of Defense also reacted. It said that the missile that North Korea launched was an ICBM, that is, an intercontinental ballistic missile. But the back-to-back launches were a message from North Korea to the United States and its friends in the region. You see, North Korea's provocation came after South Korea and the US agreed to boost their joint nuclear deterrence capabilities. In response, North Korea condemned the plan and warned of a preemptive and deadly counteraction. This year, Pyongyang has carried out a record number of weapons tests. It has also launched a spy satellite. The whole idea is to modernize North Korea's military capabilities. But against what threats? Clearly, North Korea is interested in keeping the tension simmering in the Korean peninsula, and its main political and economic backer in all this is, no points for guessing, China. While North Korea was carrying out its latest ICBM launch, China was busy hosting a delegation from the Hermit Kingdom. Yes, on the Beijing visit, the North Korean Deputy Foreign Minister said that his country will continue to deepen ties. According to the official statement, Pyongyang has vowed to work with China to safeguard common interests. Naturally, the US is worried. Washington and its allies have on many occasions expressed concerns about greater military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow. This after North Korea's Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un traveled to Russia in September to meet President Vladimir Putin. The US worries that Kim is providing badly needed munitions to help Putin continue his war in Ukraine. In return, Russia would then give North Korea technological assistance for its modernization plans. And so, as Russia, China, North Korea forge closer ties, NATO's cooperation with Asia-Pacific is getting more and more institutionalized. Last week, representatives from 8 NATO countries made joint visits to Japan and South Korea. Ambassadors from the US, Britain, Italy, Poland and others met the Japanese Foreign Minister Yoko Kamikawa. NATO partners described that the deepening of Japan-NATO ties is natural. In the same press release, the Japanese minister was quoted as saying, "The security of the Euro-Atlantic and Indo-Pacific is indispensable. Therefore, coordination between Japan and NATO members sharing values and principles is getting more and more important." NATO members also visited South Korea. South Korean Defense Minister Shin Won-sik would later tell the press that the security of the Atlantic and the security of the Indo-Pacific could never be separated. The South Korean minister said confidently that any force that threatened his country would get a resolute response from their friend, the US. Now, the reason I'm highlighting this is because this is rare. It is not very often that multiple NATO member states visit non-member states. Last year, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg also visited Seoul and Tokyo. So does this mean that NATO is looking to expand beyond the Atlantic? It's too soon to say, but it makes sense. It would make sense for US and its friends to coordinate with other like-minded countries in Asia in particular. After all, geopolitical conflicts have implications far beyond the region where they originate, especially in the area of economic security. For 2 years in a row, NATO's annual summit saw in attendance leaders from Australia, Japan, New Zealand and South Korea. It was seen as an attempt to bolster regional security cooperation. Whether or not it translates into the formation of an Asian NATO, we will have to wait and watch. Let's talk about the other war now. Ukraine's counteroffensive has largely failed. The military has not made any significant advances. There have been questions around the soldiers' performance on the battlefield. Today, Ukraine's own top spy has owned up to failure. Military intelligence chief Kirill Budanov has admitted that forcibly conscripted Ukrainians have not given any result. They have performed poorly on the battlefield. Despite that, Budanov has backed the idea of forcing Ukrainians into armed forces. He has claimed that it is the only way to maintain numbers. The spy master made these remarks during a panel discussion. He says, and I quote, "It is impossible to escape mobilization." According to him, there are currently 1.1 million people in the Ukrainian armed forces. But as it turns out, they are not willing to fight. He has also admitted that most Ukrainians prefer to cheer the country's troops away from the front line. You see, Ukraine launched a general mobilization shortly after the war broke out. It barred most men aged 18 to 60 from leaving the country. Those who were eager to fight Russian forces enlisted during the first 6 months of the conflict. But the wave of patriotic determination shocked Russia. But as the war drags on, that sentiment has largely died. Many are not particularly motivated to serve the country. Those already on the front lines are injured or exhausted. Ukraine has long run out of volunteers. It is failing to attract new recruits. The conscription drive has been riddled with difficulties. There have been draft evasions. Not to forget the rampant corruption, a story that we have told you multiple times. Reports say officials have been taking bribes to provide exemption to a few. At the same time, reports claim that they are desperately trying to catch more would-be soldiers, and they are growing increasingly violent and lawless in their approach. Some clips even show them chasing potential recruits in the streets, raiding public spaces, even beating them up. We couldn't independently verify these clips. Many men of conscription age do not want to be sent to the front. They have spent weeks or months hiding at home, trying to avoid the mobilization officers. Reports have also revealed a popular scheme in the city of Odessa. Men who did not want to serve could get a fake medical report suggesting serious issues at a cost of $5,000 in cash. Ukrainian authorities have admitted that they are facing difficulties in bolstering military ranks. Earlier this month, President Zelensky also said that further mobilization is bound to be complicated. Late last month, reports claim that Ukraine has hinted at a new conscription scheme. Kyiv has reportedly signed contracts with 2 private recruitment companies. Why? To carry out more targeted conscription, to appeal to those who have so far evaded the same. In early September, President Zelensky sacked then Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov. He had been the defense minister since the beginning of this war, but he was replaced by Rustem Umerov. Zelensky made it clear that he expected Umerov to provide him with a package of new mobilization policies. Policies that would work. So far, no details have come up. But what's the use? Conscripts have all but failed on the battlefield. They are thrown at the front after a few weeks of training. Many are often ill-equipped to fight and clearly are proving to be of little use. Let's move on. Dance has become a form of protest in Iran. People are dancing everywhere. They are dancing in classrooms, in malls, in sports stadiums. Take a look. Like I was telling you, this is not a new TikTok rage. The dance is a form of protest. Iranians are protesting against their government. While dancing in public spaces is normal in the era of reels and stories, in Iran, dancing is frowned upon. In fact, dancing between men and women in public is banned. You will find this ironic if you followed Persian culture. You see, song and dance, along with food, have been an integral part of Iranian history. Be it Yalda, the winter solstice, or Nowruz, the Persian New Year. Dances are always a part of Persian festivity, but things have changed under the clerics. A year ago in the city of Rasht, this old man broke into a dance at a fish market. 70-year-old Sadek Bana Motejad said that his dance was meant to make people happy. As you can imagine, this dance did not go down well with the Iranian regime. 12 men who appeared in the video were picked up by the police. Reports say these men were blindfolded and beaten. They also had to sign a pledge. It read they will never sing and dance in public again. Motejadid's Instagram page was scrubbed off its content. All posts were deleted. The profile picture was replaced by the emblem of the Iranian judiciary. A new post read, "This page has been shut down for creating criminal content." It added that the person engaged in the activity has quote-unquote been dealt with. You see, Motejadid is pretty popular in Rasht. People call him Boogie, which in Persian stands for megaphone. For years, he has been going to stadiums with a megaphone and cheering the fans. When the news got out of what happened to the old man, it spread like wildfire. The police did not help with its actions. Cops went around cracking down on street musicians and confiscating their music instruments. This angered people all the more. They accused the government of cracking down on happiness. People started protesting. They began filming themselves dancing to the song that the old man had grooved to. The protest picked up. People began recreating his dance moves. They started dancing everywhere: classrooms, malls, stadiums. The AFC, or the Asia Football Confederation's official Farsi page, posted a video of Iranian football players dancing to the song as well. So how has the government reacted to all of this? Authorities have been forced to pull back. Motejadid's Instagram page has been restored. The cops have issued a statement. The police say that the old man was never arrested. I'll just say this: dancers won, Iranian authorities nil. Right, moving on now. In a major development in India's battle against terrorism, the National Investigation Agency has made some critical strides today. We bring you a detailed report on these latest developments. Take a look.
The NIA, India's premier counter-terrorism law enforcement agency, has conducted extensive raids across 19 locations in 4 states, targeting a network with alleged links to the Islamic State. 11 places in Karnataka, 4 in Jharkhand, 3 in Maharashtra and 1 in Delhi were subject to NIA operations. These raids build on last week's actions in Maharashtra, where over 40 locations were raided and 15 individuals detained. Today's raids have resulted in the detention of 8 suspects, believed to be part of a network acting under foreign directives. Amongst those arrested was module leader Minaz alias Mohammad Suleiman. Officials reportedly seized explosive raw materials like gunpowder, potassium nitrate and sulfur. They also found sharp-edged weapons and accounted cash and quote-unquote incriminating documents. The findings from today's action sheds light on a pan-India terror network and how it functioned. From communication to funding, the NIA did not carry out the operations in isolation. It worked in tandem with the state police and unnamed central agencies. However, the threat that the NIA is up against is not just from ISIS. In Jharkhand, for instance, the People's Liberation Front of India, a banned Maoist organization, has also been active. Just 2 days ago, NIA conducted raids in as many as 19 locations against quote-unquote cadres and sympathizers of the PLFI. During these raids, they seized cash, jewelry, pistols and incriminating documents. An Indian Army uniform was another alarming find. It puts impersonation and infiltration on the table. There have been multiple cases in the past where this tactic has given terrorists access to sensitive areas to carry out attacks. This time around, such a plan seems to have been foiled. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Our next story begins with a question. Is Islam incompatible with European culture? This question is currently buzzing across European capitals, in particular, courtesy Giorgia Meloni. Recently, an old video of Meloni surfaced on social media. The video shows Meloni speaking in Italian about Islam, how the religion has a compatibility problem with Europe, and how certain practices in Islam may not have a place in Europe. Listen in.
Io penso che ci sia un problema di compatibilità tra la cultura islamica o certa interpretazione della cultura islamica e i diritti e i valori della nostra civiltà. A me non sfugge che la gran parte dei centri culturali islamici in Italia sono finanziati dall'Arabia Saudita e l'Arabia Saudita è una nazione che a casa sua applica la Sharia e Sharia significa lapidazione per l'adulterio, pena di morte per apostasia, pena di morte per omosessualità. Credo che queste questioni vadano poste, che non vuol dire generalizzare sull'Islam, vuol dire porre il problema che c'è in atto un processo di islamizzazione dell'Europa che è molto distante dai valori della nostra civiltà.
You heard that. There is a problem of compatibility between Islamic culture and the values of our civilization. So what made Meloni say this in the past? Well, some are blaming her brand of politics, the fact that she belongs to the Brothers of Italy party, a right-wing, ultra-conservative political party. Others say it's because of the overwhelming number of migrants who come to Europe and the kind of lifestyle they choose to live. In any case, the timing of this video going viral is interesting. Today is World Migration Day, a day meant to celebrate the role of migrants and the contribution that migration brings to development. The Italian government doesn't seem to agree. 24 hours back on Saturday, it organised an event which was also attended by UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. What was this event about? It was about jointly financing migrant repatriations in Africa. Look at these visuals. They show Sunak and Meloni attending the event in Rome. They were also joined by the Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama, who has also agreed to a controversial asylum pact. During the meeting, all three leaders said that they will further increase collaboration to combat human traffickers. Listen to these statements by Rishi Sunak.
The cost of accommodating these people will anger our citizens who won't understand why their money should have to be spent on dealing with the consequences of this evil trade. It will destroy the public's faith, not just in us as politicians, but in our very systems of government. Why? Because it is fundamental. It is a fundamental tenet of sovereignty that it is us who should decide who comes to our countries and not criminal gangs. Making that deterrent credible will mean doing things differently, breaking from consensus. And both Georgia and I are prepared to do that. Georgia is planning to send asylum seekers to Albania to be processed, and I am passing legislation so that we can send illegal migrants to Rwanda. We are both determined to break the business model of these criminal gangs. If people know that they won't get to stay, then they won't come. And that must be our aim, that everyone knows that if they come to Italy or to Britain illegally, then they simply won't get to stay.
I want to stress on the lines that stayed with me. If people know that they won't get to stay, then they won't come. The question is, how many people is Europe going to stop? How many of this is it going to blacklist? Also, we understand that the challenge of Islamic extremism is real, but is there also a bias here? Is there a mindset problem in dealing with these migrants? These are questions the critics of this migration policy are asking. Here's what European lawmakers have to say in response. They say this is not about prejudice, but integration. They say you can't come to our land and set up a parallel society. They consider it a barrier that increases cultural separation. They believe that if these migrants are settling in their country, they must live like them and look like them, accept their dress code and their culture. There are also security concerns. They point at terror attacks that have been linked to migrants. Italy and the UK say they want to end this. They want to insulate migrants from radical strains of foreign influence, make their lifestyles more compatible with their culture, or not accept them into their land in the first place. But then again, did they do the same if these migrants came from Ukraine? Not really. On the contrary, they were more than welcoming of Ukrainians because, as some Western journalists said at the time, they looked like them and lived like them. My point is simple. Yes, migration is an issue in Europe. Yes, there are security risks involved. But there's also a strong bias with which migrants from Africa and West Asia are looked at. There can be no two ways about it. And as Europe discusses migration, thousands of miles away in the United States of America, Donald Trump is under fire too. Why? Because of his recent remarks on migration, on migrants. On Saturday at a campaign rally, Trump said that if he is re-elected, many people are going to leave the country, a remark that was aimed at migrants living in America. Allow me now to quote his exact remarks. They're going to leave the country because they're going to understand that I will immediately restore and expand the Trump travel ban on entry from terror-plagued countries. If you hate America, if you want to abolish Israel, if you sympathize with jihadists, then we don't want you in our country, we don't want you. They're poisoning the blood of our country. They have poisoned mental institutions and prisons all over the world. That is what Donald Trump is saying. So clearly, the anti-immigration rhetoric is picking pace, not just in Europe, but also in the United States. The days ahead are crucial as America goes to polls and Europe drafts new policies. The anti-immigration rhetoric is also going to pick up pace. And with that, it's a wrap on Gravitas for tonight, leaving you as always with Gravitas Images. Thanks for watching.